Hello everyone, this is the first episode in a new series that I am creating called The History of Anarchism. In this we will be focusing on, the history of anarchism with an emphasis on left anarchism, with example societies as well as ideology and how it was created. This first episode will be talking about the Diggers. So without further ado, let's begin. The mid-1600s were quite a volatile time in England, as the English Civil Wars, which ultimately saw the deposition of King Charles I, then later the eventual restitution of King Charles II. During this time of unrest, a great number of forward-thinking ideas, such as universal suffrage, at least among men, equality before the law, and religious tolerance were put forth. Most of these ideas were brought forth by a group known as the Levellers. However, all of these ideas were disregarded by the ruling parliament, known as first the Long, then later Rump Parliament, as well as by Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell. They would not be brought up for about 150 years during a period known as the Enlightenment, and a bit after. However, there were also some radical changes outside the political mainstream. One group desiring radical change was known as the Diggers, or the True Levellers. They were called the latter because they accepted they represented very radical change, such as common ownership of the land, which the Levellers denied being representative of. They were called the former because of, their digging. They were farmers who lived in small, egalitarian, and rural communities that resembled models of agrarian socialism and left anarchism of the future. The generally accepted leader of the Diggers and its ideological founder was a man known as Gerard Winstanley, a man of common birth who was trained as a freeman of the Merchant Tailors Company. His business went bankrupt during the English Civil War, and he was forced to move in with his father-in-law, William King. This is where his radicalism began. He published a pamphlet called The New Law of Righteousness, and it was based on the Book of Acts 2:44 and 2:45, which states, "All who believed they were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all, as any had need." That actually sounds quite familiar. It's quite similar to Marx's statement in the Critique of Gotha, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Winstanley himself believed that man's rule over another man was not in God's will, but rather created from selfish imaginations. Winstanley and his followers took over vacant lands in several areas throughout England, began cultivating the land, sharing the crops among all. In Winstanley's specific parish at St. George's Hill in Surrey, local landowners did not like his communal model and feared its spreading. They sent armed men who successfully destroyed the colony. Winstanley fled, and then later published another pamphlet called The Law of Freedom in a Platform, where he established the Christian society where property and wages were abolished. Sounds like quite an early version of the Communist Manifesto, doesn't it? Winstanley maintained that a patriarchy was to continue, so he wasn't completely forward-thinking, but still, at least economically, he was ahead of his time. Digger communities existed in several places throughout England, with a number approximating 34 being documented. All these places meant similar fates to Winstanley's parish, where they were persecuted by the landowners either through threat of legal action, violence, or boycotts. However, the Diggers continued to leave a legacy, despite their lack of long-term impact in England. They inspired a group called the San Francisco Diggers in the late 1960s, where stores that gave away their foods, medical care, transport, and temporary housing were established. Local art was also encouraged and it flourished. Additionally, a British group called This Land Is Ours organized a rally where land on St. George's Hill, where Winstanley's group existed, was occupied. Festivals in Wigan and Wellingborough have taken place since the early 2010s as well. There we have it, an early agrarian socialist anarchist group that existed 150 to 200 years before these ideas would ever be brought up again. A strange anomaly in the history of England and Great Britain. I'll see you in the next episode.